start, can we just check as everybody's signed in? Okay. Right, this, as I say, this is a briefing session for candidates and election agents. We're delivering this session to help you through the elections process. We wouldn't expect this session to be recorded in any way. It's a private briefing session we've invited you through. If I start by introducing your presenters for this evening, there's myself, Yvonne Ledgerton, Cheryl Ryder and DCI Wild from our police force, who will be talking through how the police will be supporting the campaign, the process and how they get involved. Okay. I'm sure you're aware that this year on the 5th of May it's going to be a combined election. It's going to be Police and Crime Commissioner plus the Borough Council election. So whilst during this session we will reference the Police Commissioner election, our focus for this session is very much on our borough elections. And I know many of you have been involved in election campaigns previously, I know for a number of years. However, I know that some of you are new to the process. What I will say is, because we've got all out elections this year, and all of the 45 seats are up for election, there will be changes this year, so I would hope that you would all find the session helpful and useful. Just in terms of the programme then for tonight, I'll go through some slides. We'll talk about who's who in the elections process, who you need to speak to on what occasions. As I say, Merseyside Police will give you a couple of slides in terms of their involvement and how they will support the process. Some general information, key dates, talking about polling day, talking about other agents that you can appoint, postal vote opening sessions and the counting of the votes. And then Cheryl will take you through the nominations process, registration of absent voters, campaign do's and don'ts, and again, very much to support you through the process, code of conduct for campaigners, and then candidates' expenses. We would hope that the session should only last about an hour or so, depending on questions. We can take questions at the end of each presentation, or if you want to hang around at the end of the session, the elections team can answer any elections related questions. Okay. In terms of who's who and who you'll be dealing with during your campaign process within the council, we've listed Jed Fitzgerald there, who's the Chief Executive of Liverpool City Council, because he is the Police Area Returning Officer for the Police and Crime Commissioner elections. So he is responsible for the Police and Crime Commissioner elections on Merseyside. Mike Harden, the Chief Exec at Knowsley, is the local returning officer for the Police and Crime Commissioner elections, feeding into, obviously, Jed Fitzgerald. Mike is actually the returning officer for the Borough of Knowsley, so for the Borough Council elections, it's Mike Harden who's the returning officer.
Why isn't he present?
He sends his apologies for this evening.
No, I think he should
He's
be
also
here
the
now.
electoral registration officer for the Borough of Knowsley.
The returning officer
Myself,
should be present.
if you would let me finish, I can
Yeah.
talk through that. Myself, Yvonne Ledgerton, Deputy Returning Officer, and Cheryl Ryder, Deputy Returning Officer. And as Deputy Returning Officers, we have full powers to act on behalf of the Returning Officer. Okay. So I think if I hand over to Jim and go through a few of your slides.
No, I don't think that's okay. I think it should be noted that I believe the returning officer should be present.
Okay, thanks for that comment.
Yeah, returning officer's not present, sorry, so You got me, and thanks. I just got promoted a minute ago. I've been promoted to DCI while on that introduction now. Just detective inspector for the time being. Unfortunately, I'm not on the DCI's wages. Right, why are the police here? We get involved in elections. We don't want to get involved, but on occasions we do get involved because we have to. The Electoral Commission oversees the fairness of the elections, but they ask the police to get involved with any criminal matters. Okay.
The Electoral Commission gets involved with the fairness of the elections.
Yes.
From my knowledge, it's a matter of reporting things back to council, back to Cheryl and Democratic Services. I've never been involved with the Electoral Commission. I wish they would get involved.
They oversee every sort of area.
They don't have a representative here that we can contact.
You can contact the Electoral Commission if you wish.
No, but there's no
There isn't a local
The
representative.
detective
no.
said that there was an electoral representative in charge of the whole elections, but this is not true. It's a matter of going back to Democratic Services.
Every offence that gets reported to the Electoral Commission. They have oversight of every single offence.
No, this is not true either. This is not true either, because at the last election I made a complaint about fraud by misrepresentation to the council, and it took them from May to October to tell me that it was a police matter. And when I reported it to the police, I was told by the officer that it should have been the council that should have reported it. So I've gone back to the council, and this has dragged on for about 10 months. So
just let me finish. What we're not here to deal with is petty complaints where people are trying to get other candidates in trouble. Okay? We're not here to deal with that. We're here to deal with serious matters of fraud that would affect the electoral integrity. Okay? Not matters where someone's just trying to tell tales out of school, like childish sort of playground complaints.
no,
okay?
that wasn't a complaint.
Okay. Right. If you want to contact the Electoral Commission, all the details are in the packs. Okay? On the website here. You want to get a copy of that as well.
But there's no representative here in the ward, on Merseyside in Knowsley, from the Electoral Commission.
Yeah, because there's only about 6 of them. But you can contact them.
Well, I would over the matter from the last election. I would like to contact the Electoral
Well, I'm
Commission.
going to give you, if you let me finish, the details are in the presentation. Okay? And the details of how to contact them are in your pack. Okay, so if you wish to contact them, please
council
do so.
have got to report back to the police, which they should have done last May, and they still haven't done it. It's dragged on for 10 months.
I think this is getting vexatious now.
It is, well.
It's no wonder that we have a one party when nothing gets investigated by the Democratic Services. They're partisan. What I'm demonstrating is our Democratic Services are partisan.
Can we move on to the presentation, please?
Can we move on and carry on with the presentation, please? And then any issues that anybody wants to pick up after the session, we can pick up rather than delay everybody. You'll go through the slides. All right, Jim?
Yeah, it's fine. The police are involved because democracy is one of the key pillars of our society. If it's not fair and the integrity is questioned, the people who live in your wards have got no faith in their elected representatives. So we're here to make sure that there's a fair and democratic process is maintained. I'm here to inform you about any common breaches, any offences that may come up that we get notified a lot, and how you can avoid getting involved in them. The point of contact, any offences or any issues that you have, you are to contact your returning officer. If they deem that these are a matter for the police to investigate, they will make sure that we are made aware. And we will ensure a professional and timely investigation of electoral crime. Now, we'll show you a slide at the end about timely responses and some of the issues that come up with that, due to the fact that on many occasions there are 2 investigations running in offences. There's a civil one and there's criminal processes going on. So sometimes justice does take time, and I'll show you that in a slide at the end. Okay. For any information that you need, please go to that website. It's the Electoral Commission website. All the information you need about how to run your campaigns and any sort of offences that you may think you might be falling foul of, all the information is on there. Please refer to that. As mentioned, we will investigate allegations that are made out under electoral law. This is in the Representation of the People's Act and other acts. This is not the responsibility of your returning or accounting officer. However, we do ask that they be your first point of call. They will hopefully try and sort out any minor issues with words of advice. We are here to deal with the more serious matters. Okay? So, first point of call, your returning officers, if they think it is a serious matter, it will be referred to us. Some of the matters that have been referred to us in the past, we've had people, one candidate complained that he hosted an event where he invited members of the public in to hear what he had to say. A member of an opposing party turned up to hear what he had to say and ate the free sandwiches that he put on. The candidate complained that this was a matter of theft, and that was referred to us. Obviously, this is not a matter that is going to, affect the integrity of the election. It's still going to call to our attention. This isn't what we're here for, the petty stuff. Okay, we're here to deal with more serious offences. Again, allegations should not be considered unless you are willing to put pen to paper. We can't act on hearsay. So if you are not willing to give a statement about a complaint that you're going to put forward, there's very little that we can do. And please be aware that any statement that is made to have been false will be treated as a criminal offence, and that means the person who's made these complaints will be potentially prosecuted. Every time you give a statement, there's a little box at the top that's got those wordings on that you sign saying everything you are saying is true. If you are signing anything that is false, you are committing quite a serious offence. Some of the common offences that come in that get reported across the country. Bribery, that should be straightforward. That is monetary. If you are offering people money to vote for you, you're committing an offence. Treating is very similar. If you are offering people a treat to vote for you, so if you're saying you can have a 7-course meal if you vote for me, that's an offence. I think if you're having an event and you're offering sandwiches and tea, I don't think that would be considered treating. I think you can get away with that. That wouldn't be classed as treating. Undue influence, that's straightforward. Vote for me or I'm going to punch you. If you're threatening someone, if you don't know that that's an offence, you need to have a look at that. Personation, you're pretending you are someone else to get a vote. False applications of vote by post or proxy, again, you commit offences under Representation of the People's Act. And if you are aiding and abetting people in any of these offences, if you are encouraging people to do this on your behalf, you are committing offences. Again, multiple voting and proxy voting offences. Secrecy, the ballot is secret. If you are trying to find out who someone has voted for, you're committing offences. And finding out any information once the count's been done before the announcement is made, again, you're going to be committing offences. Imprint requirements, the vast majority of referrals we got last year were to do with imprint requirements and what was on the documents that were being posted through people's doors. All election publicity should carry an imprint with details of the full name and full postal address of the printer, promoter and agent, and who the material is on behalf of. The legislation said that this should be on the back cover of the document that you're sending out. We had a complaint last year where stickers were used that we put on the inside back cover and were in the wrong place. It's not in the public interest for us to prosecute someone because a sticker with information on it is in the wrong place. Yeah, the legislation says it should be on the back cover, it was on the inside back cover. We're not going to prosecute people because it's a waste of time. The information's there, it's just in slightly the wrong place. Again, it is the view of the Electoral Commission, email addresses for your imprint information are not acceptable. That is because if there's a problem with the documents that are printed, we can't go knock on the door of an email address. We need a physical address that we can go and visit so we can clear up anything to do with the prints. Okay? And it's also the Commission's view that a PO box should not be used. It doesn't say can't, but it shouldn't be used. False statements of facts to candidates. The Representation of the People's Act, as mentioned, section 106. If you're publishing false statements of fact in relation to candidates' personal character or conduct, it's an offence, unless there are reasonable grounds for believing the statement is true. You are not allowed to attack a candidate for his protected characteristics, and there being age, weight, height, sexuality, ethnicity, race. You cannot do that. Okay? If you're attacking them, it has to be on their policies, not on their appearance. So we're not getting personal in this election. Just some of the things. This is a very brief case study of something that the police did get involved in Surrey, and it's just going to show how long justice took in this case. The by-election in 2012, there was a report of fraudulent postal voting. Basically what happened was, a family of a candidate who did not live in the candidate's ward decided to rent the property in that ward so that they could get postal votes. He received the postal votes, put them in, and that candidate won by 16 votes. It was highlighted that there was a certain amount of votes coming from one address, and there was 9 adults living in this 1-2 bedroom house, which the Election Commission thought, well, we're not too happy about this. So the local return officers thought, we're not happy about this, reported it to the police, and an investigation took place. We basically found out that 6 adults had rented 1 bedroom in a shared property, just so they could get these postal votes sent to that address and submitted them. They were arrested and a lengthy investigation took place. And this is due to the fact that all the documents were initially seized by the Electoral Commission while they were running a civil process. The police got them after that. Eventually, jail terms were given to 4 offenders. The main figure in the offence got 15 months in prison. So the offences ranged them from 15 to 6 months in prison. But you can see when the offence took place, 2012, sentencing on to June 2015, taking only 3 years to get them to that stage. Very complicated, but this is the sort of thing that the police should be dealing with. Serious matters of fraud. Okay. I am the single point of contact for the returning officers. If they need to contact me for any issues in relation to electoral integrity issues. If you have any issues, raise them with your returning officers and they in turn will contact me. Does anyone have any questions about any issues?
Yes, I have a question about threats. In the past elections, I put my little manifesto to a retailer who put it in the window of his shop. And my opponent then said, take that down or put ours alongside. He was threatened. He didn't know what to do, so he took mine down. He said he felt under threat. What's the legal? He reported it to me. I didn't take it any further.
In what way was he threatened? Taking it down or?
He was threatened by being questioned about my manifesto in the window to take it down or put ours alongside. He was under threat as to what to do.
So he's been asked to take it down. Was he asked to take it down or was he threatened to take it down?
He was threatened. Of course he was threatened, wasn't he? That's a threat, isn't it? Take it down or put ours alongside is a threat, isn't it?
Was there a complaint made?
If a complaint's not made, as long as the police can do that.
Well, a complaint was made to me.
Well, that's not.
He complained to me.
And what did you do?
Well, at the time I didn't quite know what to do. I thought, should I have complained?
Speak to your returning officer. The returning officer will then refer it to us and we'll...
Well, they're not doing that. They're not. I explained at the beginning over the fraud misrepresentation. They're not reporting things to the police.
I am aware.
They're failing to do that.
I am aware of the matter that you're talking about, since it's been referred to me today, and I've had a look at that. Okay.
You've had a look at it?
Yeah, I've got it now in my... I've got it here from 2015. We won't be taking any action over it. Okay.
Well, the
No
officer
offences.
at the station thought that
The officer
it
at
was
the
a legitimate complaint that council should refer, and
It's
council
been referred to.
council themselves thought that this misrepresentation, fraudulent misrepresentation, should be reported to you. So all of a sudden you're on the case now, and you said
It's
there's
been
no.
reported to me today, and we won't be taking any further action.
Why?
about it.
Why not?
Okay. Because there's no offences that have taken place. There's no offences. There's
Well,
no
I'd like to
investigation.
I'd like to have a talk to you about that, go into detail about that, to see
do that
how you've
later,
come to
please.
that conclusion.
Well, I'm done now, unless anyone else has got any other questions. I am going to leave, but I can speak to you about this outside.
Yeah.
Okay? Anyone got any else questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I see it?
So moving on then, just in terms of some general information, I'll go through a couple of slides on general information. And we've set out there the role of the returning officers to ensure that the elections are administered effectively. So in respect of all complaints, the returning officers, as Jim advised there, it's very much an advisory role. So you can ring up if you've got any issues and seek advice, and if it needs referring to the police because there's a potential criminal offence, The elections team will do that. What I will say is the returning officer does have limited resources, so the focus has got to be very much on administering the election. What the returning officer will not get involved in, whilst we give advice, but will not get involved in, tit-for-tat complaints, political disputes or anything like that, because we do not have the resources for that. As I say, if you need any advice or clarity, by all means seek it, and we will refer to the police as and when required. Just in terms of, on the day, obviously it's a combined election. The Police and Crime Commissioner election takes primacy when it comes to the colour of ballot papers. So there will be a white ballot paper at each station, the Police and Crime Commissioner, and there will be a yellow ballot paper for the borough elections. So for any candidates at the borough elections, you will be on the yellow ballot paper. The Police and Crime Commissioner ballot paper will obviously list the candidates, but then there will be 2 columns, and it's first and second choice, supplementary voting system, when there's 3 or more candidates for the Police Commissioner election. In terms of the borough elections, it's going to be the standard ballot paper, all candidates listed on the ballot paper, but it will be no more than 3 votes. So because we're all out elections this year, because we have got 15 new wards that are going to be enacted as part of these elections, there will be 3 seats in each ward up for election. So each elector has the choice to put 3 X's on that ballot paper. Okay. In terms of just at the very bottom, candidates with the highest number of votes in that ward will get the longest term of office, so that's 2020. Second highest will be a 3-year term of office to 2019, and the third highest votes will get the 2-year term of office. So when it comes to the counting of the votes, that's how the seats will be allocated. Okay. Some key dates for you there. I've got them on the next 2 slides, and please note these because the returning officer has no discretion whatsoever on these dates. Obviously, we're going to put the notice of election up next week. Receipt of nominations will commence from the 29th, and Cheryl will talk to you about that in a little while. Close the nominations 4 o'clock on the 7th of April. There's no give on that, so we always advise, come in advance, let Cheryl look at your nomination paper and give you any advice or clarity, so you've got time to go away if you need to amend it. Don't leave it till the deadline on the 7th of April. Okay, other dates there, statement of persons nominated. Postal votes will be going out to the electorate from the 21st of March onwards. And then we've got the deadlines for registration for the register, and obviously postal vote applications. We'll then continue with the process, and to say statutory requirements. We'll publish the notice of poll on the 26th of April. We've got the deadline there for new proxies. We will be asking you to appoint and notify us of all the polling and counting agents that you want to appoint. And there's a deadline there, obviously polling day, I'm sure that's etched in your brain, as the 5th of May. Some other deadlines there. The verification and the counting of the votes will take place on Friday, the 6th of May. Because we've got to do the Police and Crime Commissioner at the same time, there is no way we could deliver that on the Thursday evening, so it will start on the Friday from, I think it's 9 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock. It's quite early. We're starting on Friday. But again, all this will be in your packs, your candidates and agents packs. Okay, on polling day itself, obviously the stations will open 7 o'clock, close at 10. If you've got any queries, you'll be pleased to know, the team aren't, but you'll be pleased to know, the office will be open from 6 o'clock in the morning. So the elections office, the phones will be manned from 6 o'clock in the morning on that day, and there will be somebody there to answer the phone up until 10:30 at night. Throughout the day, obviously, we'll have a whole raft of people answering phones and queries. We've got people working out on our polling stations who will be trained, obviously, and they'll be trained specifically in what advice to give to anybody receiving a ballot paper, as in the number of candidates they can vote for on each ballot paper. Voters at polling stations, if there's a queue outside, we've got a contingency plan in place, but if there is anybody in the queue at 10 o'clock, they will get a ballot paper. And we've got a contingency plan in place if there is any queuing when it's coming up to 10 o'clock at night. Postal votes, as you probably already know, can be handed in at polling stations within Knowsley or delivered to the elections office up until 10 o'clock on polling day. And anybody in the queue at the polling station at 10 o'clock waiting to hand a postal vote in can do so after 10 o'clock. What I will say on polling day, we expect anybody who is attending a polling station to behave in a calm and reasonable, considerate manner. I mean, we usually have that within the borough, which is great. Voters must be free to enter the polling station and cast their vote free from intimidation, and whether that's real or perceived. One person's intimidation might be different from others, but whether it's real or perceived, voters must be free to move around and go in and cast a vote without that. So, for example, we've had issues in the past, activities where voters are being photographed or filmed entering a polling station, and we've had complaints that they felt intimidated by this. So that is totally unacceptable. We wouldn't expect anybody to be feeling in any way intimidated when going to cast their vote on polling day. Okay. Polling counting agents, postal vote agents, as candidates you can appoint these to assist you in your campaign. If you're appointing any postal vote agents, if you can let us know who they are before we start the postal vote opening session. So we've got the names in advance, we know who to expect, because only certain people are allowed in the rooms at certain times. But if you've appointed them as your postal vote agent, obviously they can observe the proceedings when we're opening the postal votes. And then if you can give us notice in writing of any people you're going to appoint as polling and counting agents, if you can give us that notice by the 27th of April, we've got the forms, and I say they'll all be in your candidates' packs at close of nomination. Okay, there's some dates for your diaries in terms of postal vote opening sessions. They will all be held in this building, the ground floor meeting room. We've got the dates and times there, and again, these will be in your packs, so you'll get the information again. What I will say is, if you're intending to turn up at these sessions, you or your agents, just ring in advance, because if we've not had lots of postal votes in that particular day, the session might finish before you get there. So just for your own benefit, it's worth ringing and just checking the session is still running at that day and time. Okay. So the counting of the votes, as I say, we're doing that on Friday, 6th of May. What we will do is the verification of all ballot boxes at 9 o'clock. We will then move into the Borough count, followed by the Police and Crime Commission account at 2 o'clock. The postal vote, the counting of the votes will take place, as it did last year and the year before, at the Leisure and Culture Park up in Longview Drive. In terms of the counting of the votes, obviously candidates, agents, counting agents can attend. What we do have to do is wait till close of nomination to see how many candidates we've got before we can give you numbers for counting agents. Once we know how many candidates we've got that are going to be in that room at that time, how many agents, we can then say, and you can nominate 3, 5, or whatever candidate. It will be the same for every candidate, but until we know how many candidates we've got, we can't give you that number just yet. Again, we can give it you when you get your candidates and agents pack after the close of nomination. Okay. The Borough count, it is starting at 9 o'clock, but because we've got multiple votes on each ballot paper, it will take a little bit longer than normal, because it's going to be 3 X's, hopefully, on each ballot paper, depends on people vote. So it may take a little bit longer than normal. It is starting at 9 o'clock. We're working and we're supported and arranged and resourced to have it concluded by 1 o'clock. We'll then start the Police and Crime Commission account, and for anybody who's staying behind for that, That will take a bit longer because we've got to work across Merseyside and wait for other authorities to finish their accounts before any declarations can be made. Okay. I'm going to hand you to Cheryl now. She can talk you through the detail of your nomination papers and other interesting elements of your campaign.
Yvonne,
Sorry.
you said at the end of each presentation, can I just ask for a clarification?
Yeah.
You know the behaviour outside the polling stations, how does it stand on party colours or displaying party colours? Because in the past there used to be some sort of radius around polling stations that you cannot be in. Does that still stand?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the guidance will be on the Electoral Commission site. But what they say, at one time, they used to think that it may affect how people vote. But now they think it's best to be more transparent who you are and who you're working for on the day. So there's no real guidance to say that you can't be in and around there with your big rosette on. However, it's about how you approach the electorate, what you say to the electorate. If you read the Electoral Commission guidance, they will say that you can speak to the electorate as they enter or leave the polling station. But I've had a meeting today with Liverpool City Council, who are leading as the Borough for the PCC election, and as that's the primary election, they are asking us to ask you not to engage with members of the public coming in to vote as they enter the polling station. So there's more transparency about any conversations in the realms of that people have already cast their vote by the time anybody speaks to them, and there's no undue influence or anything of that nature really. So you can let people know who you are, let them cast their vote unobstructed, and then you can have a conversation or ask for details or whatever you wish to ask for, and they may give them or they may not.
Thanks for that.
Cheryl,
Yeah?
Councillor O'Hare mentioned colours, not necessarily badges. Does the colour of a person's attire still?
Can I clarify what I meant?
Yeah,
I meant the
mentioned
colours,
colours.
party colours. I don't mean the individual. You're just being a little bit pedantic now.
No, it's party colours.
It was
I
party
know what you were
colours,
aiming at.
displaying party colours. Because in the past, we used to have a radius and we obeyed that. And at the moment, we don't have to obey that. That was the clarification I was looking for. And it's just being pedantic to think that I meant the individual's colours of their clothing.
Right.
Oh, you're back, Fred.
Yes.
Okay, so can we crack on then? Let's get the nominations sorted. Okay. Right, deadline for nominations is 4 p.m. on the 7th of April. I will be chasing you if you don't make an appointment to come in with your nomination papers, because I want those nomination papers in early. So if I don't hear from you, you will hear from me. So we need that appointment in, then we do the informal check. All being well, we can formally accept them at that point. But any problems, you've got plenty of time to go out to make any changes. So although that is the deadline, I would prefer that the 6th of April is the last day that we're actually accepting nominations. That gives us all plenty of time to get the necessary documentation ready from an administrative point of view as well. The nomination papers which are in your pack and look like this. So there's several parts. It's all clipped together because this is a legal document. It shouldn't be separated and it needs to be completed and returned as one document with everything completed on that paperwork. I can actually assist you. I am in a position to prepare a nomination paper for you. So if anybody wants me to do that, because I can make it look really neat with no crossing out, I'll just need the candidate's details. And I can prepare that and give that to you so that you just literally need to go and get some signatures. So that service is available. If you want us to do that, please give us plenty of notice so we can start to get that ready for you now. Other than that, I'm going to go through each part of the nomination paper itself, but there's the nomination paper at the front where you need the signatures, there's your candidate's consent, some accompanying notes that you would need to read to ensure that you are qualified and not disqualified to stand, a certification of authorisation for anyone who's standing for a political party, which we'll talk about shortly, a request for an emblem if you are standing for a political party, and then a point of your election agent is on the back. The two key documents are attached as a sample of what your nomination paper should look like, with some key pointers to try and kind of get you to do it, so that you're not making the errors and putting the crosses out, and then things become illegible, and then we go move into a grey area. It should really be a neat legal document handed in. So all of that documentation needs to be submitted at the right time. The certificate of authorisation for anybody who is standing for a political party has to be signed by the nominating officer or a deputy nominating officer who's been appointed. And it has to be a wet signature on that certificate. It didn't used to be. It used to be something that could be faxed or scanned. But now, whoever's nominating the candidate for that party has to be wet. So you need to make sure that if you haven't spoken to your political party HQ, that you're doing that and making sure that those certifications are coming out. If you're a local nominating officer who's been appointed as a deputy, obviously it's easier because you're on hand to fill those forms in with a wet signature, but it's where that nominating signature is remote that you need to make sure that that's in hand in plenty of time. On the forms as well, if you are a political party, as we said before, there is the option for the candidate to sign to say yes, they do want that political party's emblem included on the ballot paper. We will do the informal check. We've got nomination papers available for collection, so if you haven't got any so far, Lady in Pink at the back, Anne-Marie, will make sure that you get one before you leave. If you make a mistake and it's a situation where you're virtually finished, so it's something you don't want to go back to kind of go over that nomination paper again, as long as the alteration is legible, no Tipp-Ex is used, and the alteration is made within the defined area, so you can't create your own box to add information into. It has to sit in the correct place on the nomination paper. As long as it's clear that the change has been made, we would accept it, but if it is illegible, then we won't, because as I said before, this is a legal document. And following the submission of nomination papers, they are available for inspection by anyone, but particularly by candidates and agents, after the close of nomination on the 4 p.m. on the 7th, up to the day before the election. Okay. Where it asks for information on your nomination paper, the information that it asks for is fairly simplistic. So wherever it says the word for, it means for. It means there should be no abbreviations. Abbreviations are D for road, AV for avenue, EST for estate. Whatever your address is or your name, it should be in full. There's also the option to use a commonly used name, but we've had new guidance in 2015 that the commonly used name must be different to your own full name. So, for instance, I haven't got a middle name, but if I had the middle name as Cheryl Marie Ryder, and I didn't want Marie to actually appear on the nomination paper, that facility is not available. The whole name will need to go on the nomination paper and be reproduced in the ballot paper. If you are Andrew, but you wish to be known as Andy, that is deemed to be different, and you can use that as a commonly used name. So there is new guidance, but if anyone's unsure, speak to me at the end and I can give you some advice, further advice on that if you wish to use that option. Description options are, you can leave that field blank, you can use the word independent, or you can use the party candidate descriptions as registered with the Electoral Commission. And they are your only options, so you cannot create your own 6-word description unless you have gone to the Electoral Commission and registered as a political party and they've accepted. And I think it's around £150 for you to do so. That's what it was. I'm not sure what that cost is now, but it's fairly substantial. Once you've got your nomination paper completed, you can then go out to go and get the subscribers and the signatures from the ward. The people who sign the form, I would always check before you allow them to sign the form to check that they are on the electoral register. They have to be on that March register in order to sign your nomination paper. And what we've had before is people have allowed a friend or a neighbour to sign and then realise that they're not on the electoral register. So make sure you do the checks first. I would fill in their information and then put a ruler and ask them to sign in their normal signature above that ruler, so that there's no room for error, because it can be very frustrating if you've got 9 signatures and the 10th signature is wrong, and then you can't easily repair that. Okay, now there are 3 vacancies in each of the wards, so if you had 3 candidates for that ward, you would be able to use the same subscribers on the 3 nomination papers. Your consent, as I said before, if you look at the sample, is basically just confirming that you wish to stand. We would always advise that you complete 1 or more. We have to have 1 qualification, but if you can do more, it's always advisable. So if you have been at your address for the last 12 months, then and you are on the electoral register, then you can complete sections A and D. And you are signing at the bottom to say that you are qualified and not disqualified from standing, and you need to read the links that are attached to the nomination paper to make sure that you are happy to sign to say that that is correct. You need your name and date of birth, your date of birth, and then the name, address and signature of a witness who knows you, who sees you sign and obviously signs as a witness directly after you place your signature there. And it doesn't have to be a defined person, it's just somebody who knows you, a family member, a neighbour, anyone of that nature can sign that form. Right, electoral registration, the deadline for applying is the 18th of April, that's till midnight. We're now under individual electoral registration. It's a new system of registering. We advise everybody to go online if they're not registered. There is going to be, we think that there might well be an influx of people re-registering who are already on the electoral register, because the EC's publicity started this week. And often it is around, make sure you're registered, you're not going to be able to vote in the local elections, you're not going to be able to vote in the referendum. But in excess of 90% of people in Knowsley are registered already. They don't need to go on and re-register. The indicator that tells you that you are on the electoral register is the delivery of a poll card, postal poll card, to your address, which is going to start on the 24th of March. So our advice to you, if you're out and about, is Mrs Jones only needs to register if she doesn't receive her postal or ordinary poll card through the door between the 24th of March and the 3rd of April. If you don't receive a poll card, that's an indicator that you may not be registered, and then you go onto the government site. It's very easy to do. It's a very simplistic registration. It only takes a few minutes, but people will need their NI number and date of birth and address, obviously, in order to register. That goes directly to DWP, checks are made, and generally, in most cases, that will be confirmed into the electoral registration system and the names will be added to the register. If there are any what we call mismatches, then we will contact the individual and sort out some other way of them confirming the residency, passport, driving licence, or even attestation if we needed to. So we will take action, but in general, once they've registered, it's straightforward, and then they would receive a letter to confirm that we have them now on the electoral register. Anybody who's comfortable about going online, we can obviously send a form, and what we would ask is that we prefer across Merseyside to use our forms, and we would ask you in all instances for any registration forms, absent vote forms, let us know by email or telephone, and we will send out our own barcoded, individually addressed form to the applicant. And we would also obviously suggest that you promote early registration so that people are registered in plenty of time. Once you are a candidate, you can get copies of the absent vote lists and obviously the electoral register. Now the electoral register, you've signed for this, and I know you've got a copy of the form that you've signed that the staff have given you today. So you've already signed for that ward. Now you're responsible, obviously that's sensitive information. If you choose not to stand in that ward, say you've collected a couple or you subsequently decide you don't wish to stand at all, then you are responsible to return that to us, and we will make the necessary checks to make sure that we get those electoral registers back. But obviously they are there to facilitate you, particularly to do with nomination, and the agreed purposes for your using the electoral register is obviously to complete the nomination form initially, to use it for your campaign, and to check for donations and loans that are permissible, not for selling double glazing. Okay, absent voting. Again, we have the absent vote application forms here, which we'll be happy to send out. Just pass that information through to us, and the deadline, as Yvonne said before, is a strict deadline of 5 p.m. on the 19th of April. Just a note as well, if you are encouraging people to vote or use a proxy vote, they must be aware that the person they are appointing to vote is also included on the electoral register, so they have to be an elector somewhere, and as we would check with other authorities, if it was somebody that was appointed who lived, say, in Liverpool or St Helens, we would check that they are duly on the electoral register. Some kind of general do's and don'ts. Obviously, if you go onto the Electoral Commission site, there's a wealth of information on there, which when you're standing or you're acting as an election agent, you need to make yourself aware of. And there's some links in your pack which will take you directly to the key information that you need. But the big issues that we get, as mentioned by Jim, is imprints. There's a sample imprint document which is in your pack, which gives you a guide to what you should do and where you should place your imprint material. That you comply with the general rules about advertising within Knowsley, and again, that's in the plastic slips that you've had today, but what you can and can't do. Other general stuff, don't produce any material that looks like a poll card that might cause some confusion with the electors, and you're not allowed to pay for people. It's a bit, when Jim mentioned before treating, the same things apply to if you put these in your window, then I will pay you, unless it's a bit like a news agent's, where it is their business, and obviously you have to pay them in order to promote your material in a business sense. And then the code of conduct, which kind of goes on further from that. The code of conduct really that's been given, it's the guidance that's sent out from the Electoral Commission, is all about transparency really, and perceptions, and it's there not only to protect yourself but also the elector. So there is a dual role to this really. And what it says is that obviously you need to abide by the law, and a bit like HMRC, the fact that you don't know the law doesn't apply. So when you stand for election, you're an election agent, it is a requirement for you to be aware of what requirements you need to do. Where it mentions electoral registration forms and having addresses, that's why we say use our forms, because then there's no confusion, and we know that the forms are addressed appropriately, and we give 10 envelopes wherever we need to, so that people don't have to pay in order to set up any registration or postal voting. But if you are in receipt of any, or what it says here, unaltered applications, obviously, then the RO is requested that they are delivered within 2 working days. What we ask in Knowsley is basically, it would be best if you don't handle any, other than blank application forms, that you don't handle any completed registration or postal application forms. And then there can be no perceptions or criticism of any action that you won't have taken, but then somebody could perceive that you have. Do not encourage postal redirection, as in sending postal back to a different address other than where the resident lives. Do not encourage electors to appoint a campaigner as a proxy. So really, it's better if a family member or a neighbour would do that for them. Touch your postal ballot paper. And don't get involved in anybody completing their postal ballot paper. I mean, most of this is common sense, really. If you remove yourself from the situation, then the criticisms cannot be levelled at anybody. Again, it's drawing attention to the flight posting policy, which is in your pack, making sure that you adhere to that. And again, to reiterate what Yvonne said about people have unobstructed access to the polling station, so that they can go into there and cast their vote freely. Election expenses. The election expenses forms are in the nomination pack. You have to make a return even if you've not spent any money, just to let you know that's the case. With the pack, there is also some guidance on completing the forms. We can give you some limited guidance on direction. if you haven't dealt with election expenses before. But within that pack, it mentions the limits on the amount of money that you can spend on your campaign. And I would draw attention to the fact that if there are two candidates, what we would call joint candidates, and there's a description of what a joint candidate is, that limit is reduced by 25%. But if there are three, that limit is reduced by 33%. So you need to be aware of what you can spend. And where the expenses period starts on the notice of election, which is the 24th of March. If you only put in your nomination paper after that date because you only suddenly decided that you wanted to stand, then you can start on the date the nomination paper is submitted, and then you have to complete your election expenses form no later than Friday the 10th of June with all of the necessary receipts that need to accompany that election expense. I'm happy to give further guidance if anybody's not dealt with election expenses previously. So, and then we have on the back the questions, which we'll take now, but on the back page as well we've got some contact information, and we're available if you want to email or ring us, we're available to give advice. Is there any questions? If anybody, thank you.
What address should people send postal voting application forms to?
To this address, but if we send them out, Ruth, obviously the paperwork has our address on, and we would send an envelope with it, so there's no cost implication to the elector. So if you knock on the door and Mrs Jones says, I'd like to vote by post, jot down your name and address, think it over on an email to us, and we'll send it out by text. That just takes all the hassle away from what you're doing.